Okay, welcome back to the Snap. Michael Heaver, of course, alongside my co-host Patrick O'Flynn. Patrick, first of all, how are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm off to the gym after this, and I've got to try and run 2 miles in less than 17 minutes 20, which to you young uns probably doesn't sound like much, but to me, it's going to be a challenge.
Certainly sounds it, rather you than me. I like lifting things, not running. But look, let's start off with GB News. Obviously, huge amount of interest surrounding the launch. Obviously, a few bumps in the road, a few teething problems. The introduction of Nigel Farage's show, Patrick, seems to be a bit of a turning point for the channel. Nigel's show, of course, Monday to Thursday, 7 p.m. on GB News. Last week, the first week, I believe it beat Sky News in the time slot every day. It was on air, and it came through that on the Monday show of this week, it actually beat BBC News as well. Very encouraging.
Yeah, I think it's ended the slight sag that GB News had a sort of 3-4 weeks in. And I sat and watched it the other night from start to finish for the first time, and I must say it's very well conceived, very well thought out, good segments, and Nigel using the communication ability that he built up during his LBC show for several years. It works excellently. The talking pints thing at the end is quite fun too. Farage, they've really thought it out, and it flows, and it's a good hour of television. And I think even people who haven't been fans of Nigel Farage are admitting it is indeed a good hour and agenda setting too.
Yeah, it was striking to me how quickly some people who seem to be severely rattled about there actually being a sort of right of centre alternative to the BBC, how quick they were to sort of mock and write off GB News' prospects. They seem to be completely ignoring the fact that Nigel's show is doing rather well. And I think it shows you the potential of building that audience. Also, we should, talk about the fact that it's, in 2021, it's a very different landscape in terms of you can't just look at TV figures. You've got to look at the huge numbers of views that GB News is racking online, whether that be YouTube, whether that be Twitter, whether that be Facebook.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. But it also shows with a new television station, having someone with a big social media following can drive viewers onto that platform too. And I think it's really interesting that Nigel Farage, only in his second week of the evening show, he's already set an agenda on the immigration and the cross-channel boats story, forcing the bigger networks to cover it on their news bulletins. And we've even seen some polling I was looking at today from Redfield and Wilton showing that immigration control is now the #1 issue for Tory voters. And some of the well plugged in kind of Tory camp followers among the commentariat, thinking of James Forsyth on the Times and Sebastian Payne on the FT, they've both done pieces in recent days about how Nigel Farage and immigration is worrying Boris Johnson, and particularly with regard to the cross-channel landings escalating. Now, that's an aspect that Boris Johnson was under no pressure whatsoever from any person of significance in the Westminster bubble, and now he's feeling the heat and public opinions being brought to bear, and that's fantastic. That really says that GB News is adding something to the media climate.
Now, just turning to the economy, Patrick, I mean, we've discussed this several times before. We had years of doomsday predictions from hardline Remainers about what would happen to the UK if we dared to leave the EU. Well, we've just seen the IMF's latest forecast, another upgrade for the British economy. Economy set to surge 7%, the most in 2021, the most for any advanced economy, tied with the US, way ahead of the Eurozone. The Eurozone set to grow, forecast to grow 4.6% in 2021 compared to 7% for the UK. And when you take the 2021 and 2022 forecast, that's an 11.8 forecast increase growth of the UK economy. What do you make of that?
Well, that's very positive news. And I think even worse than the Eurozone average, I think they were predicting now the German economy would grow by just 3.6%. So we're doing almost double, or expected to do almost double what the Germans are doing in the current year. I think, it's real rocket boosters behind the economy. We've seen the new wave of major inward investment, including in the automotive sector, which shows the confidence in the long-term prospects for the UK economy, because you don't sink hundreds of millions of pounds in new plant and machinery into an economy unless you're convinced that it's on a sustainable growth path. So I think Remainers are really going to struggle, the ultra Remainers, rejoiners, to paint Brexit as an economic disaster. I notice now they've latched onto a few supermarket shelf shortages of particular products because of the number of staff who've been pinged, and they're trying to blame that on Brexit. I think it's clutching at straws now. At the very least, most people are going to think Brexit has been neutral for the economy, but in fact, there's more and more weight of evidence that it's going to be a net plus.
Yeah, and again, we heard scare stories about what would happen with Nissan in Sunderland. Of course, they announced absolutely huge investment, and it's recently been announced Nissan are recruiting more than 400 staff at the Sunderland plant. And I just think it's interesting, Patrick, that we're seeing time after time, issue after issue, example after example of Brexit reality completely disproving those ridiculous Project Fear myths. And, I've looked at some of the polling on this. The support now for EU membership in the UK is the lowest it has ever been. And I expect that to keep going down.
I agree with that too. And interestingly enough, now you're seeing from traditional pro-EU publications, ranging from the New Statesman to the Eye, you're seeing pieces which they seem to be admitting now that there's an upward wage effect for working class jobs that's been associated with Brexit. After years of telling us that it was a myth, that the open labour market was depressing wages. So I think, even the left are now thinking, could we actually push issues on the back of Brexit? So I think there's a whole paradigm shift out there. Only the Labour Party seems to be left behind it, because we all saw Rachel Reeves recently giving an interview in the FT in which she talks about filling in some of the gaps in our relationship with the EU, which is rather ominous. Perhaps people in the Labour Party think one of the gaps is the fact that EU law is no longer supreme in this country. Well, I don't think many of us are going to trust Labour to take those decisions.
And meanwhile, there's something of a standoff really between the British government and the EU, because we had Lord Frost speaking about the Northern Ireland Protocol, saying that the conditions had been met to trigger Article 16, but that the government wasn't going to do that. The government was seeking to renegotiate the protocol. The EU almost immediately turning down, saying that renegotiation wouldn't happen. But the EU now pausing imminent legal action against the UK. Patrick, do you think that the triggering of Article 16 now is inevitable?
I don't think it's inevitable. I think that the government's going to try and play it long and keep extending unilaterally, perhaps sort of transition periods when the full kind of red tape of the protocol doesn't have to be applied. And it's going to try and sap the political will on the EU side for a while. But I think that the British government, I've always thought, is prepared to trigger Article 16. I think the EU knows that. And I think we're going to get a few months where there will be some political progress and maybe a somewhat lighter touch version of the protocol being applied. Whether that's enough to satisfy British territorial integrity or unionist opinion in Northern Ireland, I think that remains to be seen. But I think the government's decided to play this long and try and sap the kind of political will of the 27 EU countries to not budge. And I think that's probably quite a wise approach.
Well, as ever, guys, make sure you hit subscribe and the bell so you don't miss the next episode of The Snap. Myself and Patrick will be back next week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.
See you soon, folks.